Rock and metal invasion. Rock and metal invasion. Rock and metal invasion. Rock and metal invasion.
Hi, welcome to Rock and Metal Invasion. My name is Steve. Coming up on the show today, I'm doing my top 10 hard rock heavy metal albums from 1983. So I'm going to count them down from 10 through to number 1. My 10, so just what I think, 10 favorite hard rock heavy metal albums from 1983. And I've got quite a few honorable mentions as well. And I got to say, as I've said with all of these yearly top 10 countdowns that I've done, because I've done 92, 91, all the way down now, I'm at 1983 now. It's been really hard at times to sort of separate some of these. And on another day, number 7 might be number 9, 8 might be number 4. You know, it really can change that much. But just as it is right now, as I've been playing some of these and sort of thinking through what would go where, this is what I have come up with. So I'm going to leave the honorable mentions until the end. Like I said, there are quite a few. But I'll start from number 10 and go down to my number 1. And once I've got to my number 1, of course, for 1983, I would have done 10 years. I would have done a top 10 from 92 all the way backwards, you know, from 92 down to 1983. All right, so let's get into it. My number 10 album from 1983 is Kix and Cool Kids. So this is their second album. I think for a lot of people, this is an album that isn't as, you know, critically acclaimed as some of their other albums. Maybe a little bit new wavy at times, but this is 1983. But there's still some AC/DC type songs on here. They've got a few more cover songs than what maybe they usually would have. But actually, I really like the cover songs. They've got Burning Love on here, which opens up the album, which was, I think, an old Spider song. Spider, pretty good band, a female-fronted band. And I think that they do a good version of that. Also, Body Talk, which I think was a Nick Gilder song. That's a really good song as well. But Loco Emotion, that's one of their songs. That's a really good one. Cool Kids is good. That might be another cover as well, because I don't recognize the songwriters on that one. For Shame, I think that's a really good song. Yeah, it's quite different. Well, yeah, it's a bit different to, you know, Midnight Dynamite, Hot Wire, you know, some of their other albums that come after this, but this is still a good album. So yeah, that comes in at number 10. Coming in at number 9, an artist I've talked about a little bit on my channel, done some album battles. In fact, you know, a few of these ones coming up have been the subject of, you know, album battles, you know, artist versus artist type things. And I did one with this. This is Aldo Nova and Subject. So this is his second album. This is the follow-up, of course, to his successful debut album. This one didn't do quite so good. And, you know, I think one of the problems with it is loosely a bit of a concept album, but it is still a really good album. There's some good songs on here. I think what I've sometimes struggled with a little bit is there's a lot of these sort of short interlude type songs, you know, and again, it's trying to tell a story. But, you know, Subject's theme, Armageddon, Race Cars, Armageddon, there's quite a few songs that even start off the album before it really gets into his first song proper, which is Monkey on Your Back, which is fantastic. Hold Back the Night is probably my favorite song on the album. Victim of a Broken Heart's also very good. Hey Operator, really, there's some really good songs on here. There's a bit of stuff I think probably I could have done without, but at the same time, when it's good, it's really good. And I really like Aldo Nova. You know, Aldo Nova and John Bon Jovi, of course, have a bit of a connection. And there's definitely some, if you like early Bon Jovi, this came out, of course, in 83, so before even the first Bon Jovi album, but some of the sounds like it could have come from, you know, one of those first couple of Bon Jovi albums. So, yeah, really good. So that's coming in at number 9, Aldo Nova's solid album, Subject. All right, number 8. This is a big band, well-known band. And, you know, through the 80s, they perhaps didn't have the success that they had in the 70s. You're probably starting to guess who I'm talking about. And they maybe decided, because they were struggling a little bit, to take off the mask. So, yeah, I'm talking about Kiss and Lick It Up. So, yeah, this is the album where they made a big deal of the fact that they were now taking off the masks or the makeup, and came up with this album, Lick It Up. Of course, Vinnie Vincent comes in for this album as well and does a lot of the songwriting. And it's a really strong album. Kiss had a habit in the 80s of opening up their album quite often anyway with a really good kick-ass hard rock song. And this album is no exception. Exciter, what a great way to kick off the album. Usually these songs that kicked off the album in the 80s were written by Paul Stanley. And yeah, really good, heavy song, that one. But I actually really like A Million to One. I think that's a brilliant song. But other good songs, Not for the Innocent. I really like that one. Of course, Look It Up, the title track. It's okay. It's catchy. All Hell's Breaking Loose. There's a music video for that one. That's not too bad. But yeah, it's actually a real solid Kiss album. But yeah, some standout songs as well. So that Look It Up is coming in at number 8. At number 7, yes, again, another band I've done album battles with. Of course, with Tim Derling as well, helping me out on that. We did Night Range, I think, versus Survivor. And this was an album we talked about, Midnight Madness. So Night Ranger, Midnight Madness. I love the album cover. There's so much to look at when you look at the album cover and the back cover as well. It's really cool. But this album there, I think this is their second album. Yeah, second album. Is probably most well known for the big hit Sister Christian, which is a good song. But for me, and this was the single as well, Rockin' America, that's one of the best songs. Rumors in the Air, that's fantastic. But actually, it's a bit of a ballad, but I think it's better than Sister Christian. When You Close Your Eyes, I think that should have been a massive hit. That's such a good song. Chipping Away is very good. Touch of Madness. They had 2 lead guitar players, Jeff Watson and Brad Gillis. And they could play. And sometimes I think, yeah, they did have a few ballads. They weren't the heaviest band, sure, but there's some nice guitar playing on these albums, and just great production. And of course, you've got some nice keyboard work as well. Comes in on it. Yeah, just really very consistent band throughout the 80s. All their albums are really worth checking out. And like I say, this is 1983. This is like really before hair metal's really coming off. But this is just exactly the kind of sound a lot of the hair metal bands would then end up coming out with albums just sound exactly like that, really, with that formula. They had it down really early. All right, next one is a band from Switzerland, believe it or not. Yeah, Krokus and Headhunter, probably their most critically acclaimed album. I think if you were to ask most Krokus fans, Headhunter's probably going to be most likely would be called their best album. I'm not sure I'd agree, because I even like the albums that come out after this, but it is different. They definitely go for a more commercial sound. This is more raw. Yes, they've got those AC/DC comparisons can definitely be made on this album, but actually I really think they discovered that more of their own sound on this one. So it's a really nice sort of compromise between, they're wanting to be like AC/DC, but also, having their own sound. So I think this is the closest to like a real classic heavy metal album that they ever put out. So it's pretty heavy at times. Eat the Rich, Headhunter. I love Screaming in the Night. What a great song. And Stayed Awake All Night is very good as well, really catchy. But everything is good to great. Ready to Burn, Night Wolf. Yeah, like I said, this is pretty heavy album at times. And if you were to play this in the 80s and you were going around saying this is great heavy metal, it's exactly what it is. It's 80s heavy metal, really. This is not AOR hard rock. This is heavy metal, really. The music video for Screaming in the Night, that's classic. I mean, a lot of these, especially with 1983, it's interesting. You look at some of the music videos from some of these albums, they're perhaps haven't aged that well, but they're quite fun to watch now. And I enjoy that one. But yeah, one of my favorite bands, because they're just throughout the 80s, I think very consistent. Yeah, they changed their sound a little bit, but I really enjoy all their albums. So yeah, Headhunter's coming in at number 6. And it's funny because I thought, that album I like, but I thought I was probably going to end up in this sort of 8, 9, 10 sort of range, but gave it a bit of a spin, and I was like, oh man, this is a good album. It's actually giving my top 5 a bit of a run for its money, but didn't quite make it in. Now, the top five are all, I think, yeah, pretty much really well-known bands, classic albums, in fact, and just so happens, and that's not why I chose them. This is how I also really like them. So, coming in at number five, it's Journey and Frontiers. Now, I wasn't actually really a big Journey fan back in the 80s, more of a band I discovered later on. And I got to say, I'm not necessarily a massive fan of some of their other albums, but this one is just such a classic, especially the opening track, Separate Ways. That's fantastic. In fact, every song on side one I really like. I think it fades away a little bit on side two. Edge of the Blade, though, I think is very good. Troubled Child as well, pretty good. But yeah, side one especially really just, and yeah, it does have some ballad type songs. Faithfully is definitely, very much a ballad, but I quite like it, I gotta say. I think it's, you know, yeah. Steve Perry on vocals, amazing. Neil Sean, I think his guitar playing on here is awesome. So with those two guys, Steve Perry, Neil Sean, when they're on top form, it is good. And yeah, this is a very good album. So that's my number five, Journey and Frontiers. All right, so we've got number four now coming up. I'm doing very well. Usually I lose track of counting where I'm up to, but I'm managing to keep track today. So number four, and I've gone with Ozzy Osbourne and Bark at the Moon. This is another artist I find is really consistent throughout the 80s. Yeah, some better than others, but still always good to great. And the title track, I think, is excellent. Of course, this is when Jakey Lee comes in on guitar. But I also really like Rock and Roll Rebel. I think that's a fantastic song. Yeah, so this is the European edition. So yeah, so it's missing the song Slow Down. So I actually had to end up getting this 12-inch single, which is the Back at the Moon 12-inch single. So it's got Slow Down on the B side, and it's also got a song called One Up on the B side, which isn't on the album. So yeah, it's a bit different. The European edition is a bit different to the US edition. Also, what's different is it's called Forever on this album, but on the US edition, it's called Center of Eternity, but it's the same song. But yeah, like I said, probably the two best tracks, Rock and Roll Rebel and the title track, Back at the Moon. But yeah, also I do like Waiting for Darkness. That's very good. And those two songs that didn't make this album, one up on, or didn't make this version of the album, one up on the B side and Slow Down, are actually really good as well. So Ozzy, I think, often had a good habit of having some quite good B sides or songs that didn't make the album. All right, so it's number four. Coming in at number three, another well-known band, and this was real tight actually. The number three, number two battle was fairly close. I mean, arguably you could say even the battle for number one was close, but I decided to go with Def Leppard and Pyromania, massive album. My favorite Def Leppard album, I think I'd have to say, because I think although I didn't really like Hysteria, I think this one, Pyromania, has aged a lot better than Hysteria, and it's just that little bit heavier, not quite so slick and commercial sounding. Still, yeah, has some heaviness to it. Great songs though, still very melodic. Every song was good to great. Yes, you got Matt Lang here producing it, but it's just not quite so overproduced like Hysteria is at times. I think a little bit, and maybe just I don't know, because I don't remember hearing a lot of these songs on the radio here in New Zealand. But with Hysteria, half the album's been played on radio and still is played all the time. So perhaps as well, there's a little bit of sort of hearing those songs so much. Well, this still sounds a little bit more fresh for me. But yeah, great album. So yeah, number three, Def Leppard and Pyromania. And yeah, like I said, it was a tight battle between number three and number two, but number two is Mötley Crüe, Shout at the Devil. Had to have Mötley Crüe in here, of course. This is their second album. For me, it's a close one between their debut album and this album as to my favorite Mötley Crüe album. And it's interesting too, because they actually sound quite different, but they're both really great. Of course, this is again, when I'm talking about the sound at the time, this would be pretty much called heavy metal. This is a 80s heavy metal album. Even the imagery, very heavy metal. And I think they've got a cool image. I think that's almost like one of the reasons, although it's got nothing to do with the music, one of the reasons I just this one edged out Def Leppard because they just got that cool factor that Def Leppard probably don't really quite have as much. At least at this time. Wouldn't necessarily say Mötley Crüe have the cool factor these days, but yeah, Shout at the Devil, of course, the title track, very good. But everything on side 2, I think, is fantastic. Danger's very good. Too Young to Fall in Love. Red Hot's a good rocker. 10 Seconds to Love. It's just, yeah, really, really good stuff. So, Vince sounds great on this album. He really does. And yeah, good production for its time. This sounds amazing. So, yeah, Mötley Crüe, Shout at the Devil is number 2. Number 1, I'm not sure if you're able to guess it, but if you know me, if you know this channel quite well, I am a big Dio fan. So, yes, it is Dio and the debut album, Holy Diver. Yeah, and actually it did come out in 1983, which, I don't know, it just sounds, to me, it seems like quite hard to believe it was 1983 when this came out. But it was, and I didn't hear it at the time. Once I started getting into hard rock and heavy metal around 86, 87, that's when I sort of discovered bands like Dio. And this may have been, I can't remember, may have been the first Dio album I heard. But yeah, what a classic. Every song is just so good. Holy Diver, the title track, fantastic. Probably my favorite Dio song, though, is Don't Talk to Strangers. Love that song. It's just, this is a classic Dio lineup as well with Vivian Campbell on guitar. It just sounds so good. And even the artwork, everything, it's just a great album. So yeah, Rainbow in the Dark with those keyboards. Maybe some people don't like it. I like it. I think it just changes things up a little bit. Stand Up and Shout, the way it opens with that good, fast-paced rocker. That's really, really good, fantastic stuff. So, the next album is probably equally as good. Carries on really with what they did here, but no, this is just such a good album. So, yeah, my number 1 album for 1983 is Dio and Holy Diver. All right, so actually what I'm going to do in a future show is I'm going to do a top 10 of the top 10. So I'm going to take my number 1 from 1983, from 1984, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, and 92. I'll take my number 1 albums from each of those years and then do a ranking on that. So that's going to be difficult because they're all going to be amazingly great albums. And I'm going to try and rank them and come up with my sort of number 1 album from that period of time, but that's for future shows. So just before I finish up, I will just go through some honorable mentions because there could be some of you going, oh my gosh, I can't believe it didn't make us top 10. But it is, again, it's my top 10, so that's kind of the way that goes. And yeah, sometimes I will admit on my top 10s I've missed one, I've missed 2, I forgot about 1 or 2, and it's like the chances are they would have made the top 10, and that may have happened, but just to kind of, just to kind of check that off. These are ones I did consider, but they didn't make the top 10. Now, a band that I haven't really talked about, I think, when I've been doing these top 10s, I think I did talk about them maybe in the 91 show because they probably did make the top 10. But other than the album that they put out in 91, throughout the 80s, I actually wasn't really a big fan of them. And probably because I really wasn't a big fan of thrash metal. But Metallica, so Kill 'Em All, it came out in 83. I know it's considered a classic, and so is, Master of Puppets and, and their other albums that they put out in the 80s. But, I like them. But I again, it's one of those things where I wasn't into it at the time. And, yeah, going back and listening to it, I can appreciate it. But it's just not a top 10 album for me. And just the fact I don't even have it on vinyl, I only have it on CD, but probably tells you something there. But yeah, so that's an honorable mention though, definitely, as is Black Sabbath and Born Again. There's a couple of really strong songs on here. I actually really like Hotline. I think that's fantastic. Also, Disturbing the Priest. You've got Ian Gillan on vocals, and he sounds great on that. It's a bit crazy, but it's good. Trash, I think, is a good heavy one to kick off the album. So yeah, it's a good album, definitely. It's different, I think, to the sound they had before, obviously. When you've got Ian coming in on vocals, the production, I guess people have talked about as being a little unusual. Interesting too, this cover is actually there's a real picture. This is based on a real picture of a baby, but they've obviously they changed the picture a little bit. I think it was on Time magazine or something. A baby was on the cover, and they've just changed the obviously the baby didn't have claws and all this kind of stuff. So, but it is actually a real baby, and then they've just changed the photo. Yeah. Anyway, that's honourable mention. Quite right. Mental health. So yeah, this was a big hit. This really started the whole hair metal scene in some ways, really. Yeah, I mean, obviously, talk about some of these bands that were in the top 10, like Def Leppard and Mötley Crüe. They had a lot to do with it as well, but they didn't actually initially, at least, have this big impact that Quite Right had. With number one hitting number one, they were like a massive band there for a while. But and they had that classic sort of hair metal sound and look and image. And yeah, it just they were one of the first bands. It's interesting, like them and also Twisted Sister. They were like two of the bands that had the most success initially, but then faded away. And then bands who had a similar sort of image and sound then took over from them. But yeah, it's a good album. I like the title track. I don't really need to hear "Come On Feel the Noise" again. Loves a Bitch is really fantastic. Actually, interesting thing too about Mental Health. It actually used to be, well, the song is based on a song called "No More Booze" by the band Snow, who is the band that Carlos Cavazo used to be in. So if you check out the band Snow and their song "No More Booze," you'll hear the basic sound that was the song that became the song Mental Health, which is a great song. Yeah. So, but yeah, it didn't make the top 10. I've got a couple of EPs here. So yeah, they're not going to make it because exactly that they're EPs, but they're good ones. And I wanted to mention them. Lisa Price, Priceless, female fronted, only put this out. I think she might be Canadian. And I guess my reasoning for that is it's got John Albani on guitars from Rabbit, and also probably more well known for being from Lee Aaron. But it's really good stuff, really good, sort of like female fronted, early Bon Jovi. Yeah, I like it. I like it. It's not that heavy, but I do like it. Only 6 songs on it though. Rat, their EP. So yeah, it's a well-known one. I've actually got the EP that has the bonus track "You're in Trouble." So I think, and it's interesting too because yeah, it only doesn't even list it here. It's only got 6 songs listed on the back, but it does have a 7th song, which is "You're in Trouble," which really isn't essential because of course it ends up being on their debut album. This is more of an early version of it, as as is early versions of early version of Back for More. So Back for More's on here as well. But then you've got You Think You're Tough, Sweet Cheetah, You've Got It, the Aerosmith cover, Walking the Dog, and you've got Tell the World as well. So there are songs that didn't make the debut album on here, so it's worth having. But is it on the box set? No. Why? I don't know. Right. I'm sure there's reasons for that. But anyway, maybe it will get reissued sometime soon. Rainbow, Bent Out of Shape. That's an honorable mention. Yeah, I mean, there's some good songs on here. It's just, I guess, for me, not quite there's some songs that don't really do it for me quite as much. It's far off the top 10. I mean, I really do like Stranded. What's the Street of Dreams? Great song. And what an epic music video. It's like almost like a mini movie. Check that out. Yeah, Can't Let You Go. It's good, but maybe not great. They're going for more of that. Again, they're really Richie Blackmore was really trying for, I guess, some commercial success. It's a bit more commercial, obviously. And yeah, it's good, but yeah. And then of course this is, I think, their last album for quite some time. But yeah. And a couple more honorable mentions. Rock Goddess, Hell Hath No Fury. Now, I probably should have mentioned this one when I did my show on title tracks that exist but aren't actually on the album. So there is a song that they did called Hell Hath No Fury, but because I've got the European edition of the album, so this is the European edition of Rock Goddess's Hell Hath No Fury, it actually does not, the song does exist, but it's not on the album. So in order to get that song, I had to buy the 12-inch. I didn't know I Loved You Till I Saw You Rock and Roll, which is a Gary Glitter song. Really good. I like the song though. But yeah, so it's on. That song is on here. If you want Hell Hath No Fury, if you get the US version album, it's on there. But It's a good album. Hold Me Down. That's my go-to rock goddess song. It's really good, really good. So that was their second album. Interestingly enough, though, their debut album was also released in 1983. So they released their first two albums in the same year. So early 1983 for their debut album, and then Hell Hath No Fury, their second album in the same year. I think the US version of the album might have come out in '84. But basically it was released in 1983. And their first album is good as well. Last one I wanted to mention, is another one I did album battles with. Survivor and Caught in the Game. Slander, that's really good. That's one of my favorite sort of Survivor songs. But yeah, Caught in the Game, the title track's good. Jackie Don't Go, really good as well. This is, of course, the last album with Dave Bickler on vocals. Jimmy Jamison comes in for Vital Signs, the follow-up album. And that's probably my favorite Survivor album, the follow-up album, Vital Signs. But this is good, but it really didn't get much attention, which is amazing when you think about the fact their previous album, Eye of the Tiger, had been such a massive hit. Of course, the title track being a huge hit for them. But there we go. So, but they'd still make it then a great comeback, because then Vital Signs does really well. Really unusual situation where you have a hit album, then the next album bombs, and then the next album's even a bigger hit, I think. So Vital Signs, I think, probably the most successful album. So so there we go. So there's my top 10 for 1983, along with some honorable mentions. Let me know in the comments what you think of my top 10. What did I miss? What would be in your top 10? What maybe even be some honorable mentions. If you like this type of content, make sure you hit the thumbs up and make sure you subscribe so you can catch up when I do more episodes. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you later. All right. See ya.